No matter what position you play, if you want to be a complete footballer, you need to know how to defend. But have you ever felt helpless as attackers breeze past you? Maybe you think great defensive players rely on speed and strength, but that's not the full story. The best defenders control the game by following key principles that allow them to anticipate, disrupt, and win the ball back. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you. These 6 steps are the foundation of smart defending. Each one builds on the last, and by the time you reach the final step, you won't just react to the game, you'll control it. So this video is going to be broken down into 2 main parts. The first is going to be about controlling the attacker, while the second part of the video is going to be about how to actually win the ball back. So let's get into it. Sergio Busquets. If you had to pinpoint what made him so great defensively, what do you think it would be? In my opinion, what truly set him apart was his ability to anticipate, to read the game before it happened. Anticipation is the foundation of great defending. When you get this right, every other defensive action becomes easier. So, how can you stay one step ahead instead of just reacting? Number 1, scan for dangerous areas. Think, where's the biggest threat? Maybe it's a gap in the back line, or an open passing lane to their playmaker. Identify these spaces so you can position yourself to cut them off. Number 2, read body language. An attacker's body position often reveals their next move. Are they opening up their stance to switch the play? Are their eyes locked on a through ball option? Recognizing these cues allow you to move early and shut down passing lanes before the ball even arrives. Number 3, recognize patterns in play. Every player has habits. For example, when I play, I love to cut in on my right foot and spin the ball to the far post. The sooner you can recognize your opponent's tendencies, the more you can predict their decisions and shut them down before they act. Have you ever played a game where it feels like you have no time on the ball? The moment you receive a pass, a defender is already pressing you, forcing you to rush and make a mistake. And that's exactly how you want your opponent to feel, under pressure, with no time to turn, and out of options. In step 1, you learned how to anticipate where the ball is going. Now, it's time to act on that knowledge by closing space, so your opponent can't get comfortable. So how can you close space effectively? The first thing we can do is we can read the pass before it happens. As an example, one cue I use is I watch when the passer drops their head. This usually means that they're committed to making the pass, and that's your moment to sprint. So you're on the receiver the moment they take their first touch. Number 2, we need to capitalize on a poor first touch. Most players are vulnerable on their first touch, especially if they didn't scan before receiving, giving you the perfect chance to step in and win the ball. The third thing we can do is when we're pressing, we can make a looping run. This forces your opponent into areas of the pitch that you want, limiting your opponent's options and setting up for the next phase of your defense. Now, here's the key. If you get tight and force them to turn away from goal, don't let them turn back. Stay close, use your hands if needed, and make them feel that their only choice is to play the ball backwards. If they can't advance, you've already won the battle. If you master these first 2 steps, attackers will hate playing against you. You'll frustrate them, force them into making bad decisions, and I can guarantee you that coaches and players will start taking notice. You've anticipated the play and you've closed your opponent down, limiting their space. But what if they still manage to turn? Now your job is to guide them where you want them to go, either away from goal or into less dangerous areas. Most goals come from central areas, so generally you want to force attackers to the sidelines. The closer they are to the touchline, the fewer options they have. Passing angles are limited and the risk of losing possession increases. But this isn't a one-size-fits-all rule. You need to read the game and adjust based on your team's positioning. So let's get into it. Option 1, forcing your opponent wide. If you're defending 1v1 with no immediate support, pushing the attacker towards the sideline is usually your safest bet. This cuts off their ability to play forward and buys time for your teammates to recover. Option 2, forcing inside. Sometimes guiding the ball into traffic is the better option. If you're a center midfielder and have defensive support behind you, letting an attacker turn inside where it's congested can increase their chance of a turnover. The key is dictating play instead of reacting to it. Make the attacker play in your terms, not theirs. Think about the offside trap. It only works if everyone steps up together. If even one defender hesitates or doesn't communicate, the whole plan fails, and suddenly the striker is in on goal. That's why talking to your teammates is everything, not just in the offside trap, but in every other defensive situation. If you stay silent, you might think you're defending well, but if your team isn't on the same page, you'll feel like you're pressing alone, while your opponents always have an easy outlet. That's why communication is a game changer. It keeps you connected with your team, helps you control the play, and make your job defensively so much easier. With these 4 steps, you now know how to control the attacker. But defending isn't just about controlling, it's about winning the ball. And in part 2, we're going to cover exactly that. I'm sure you've heard the term jockeying, but what exactly is it, and why is it so important? Jockeying is the art of delaying and controlling your opponent without diving into a tackle. The goal isn't always to win the ball immediately. It's to slow the play down, force your opponent into less dangerous areas, and to wait for the right moment to strike. Here's how to jockey effectively. Number 1, stay low. A slight bend in your knees keeps you balanced and ready to react. Number 2, be side on. Angle your body to guide the attacker into the space you want. Number 3, stay on your toes. Light, quick footwork helps you adjust to their movements. Number 4, mirror their movements. Be patient and don't overcommit. And number 5, wait for the right moment. Let their attacker make the mistake before going in for the tackle. But here's something important. If you've already applied the previous steps, you've already guided them where you want them to go. That means you're not alone. Your teammates are there to help. Your job was to delay the attack, and that alone is a defensive win. Imagine a player dribbling directly at you. You've used anticipation to read their movements, close them down to deny space. You've been jockeying to limit options and force them into less threatening areas. Now, after all that work, your opponent finally commits to trying to beat you. And this is your moment to win the ball back. Just like we've been emphasizing smart defending throughout this video, you also need to tackle smart. That starts with knowing where you are on the pitch. Inside your own box, you have to be extremely careful. Not only do you want to avoid conceding a penalty, but a reckless tackle could also take you out of play. Near the halfway line, you can afford to take more risks, since even if you miss the tackle, your team still has defensive cover. Now, there are many ways to win the ball back, and each situation calls for a different approach. So, let's break down the most effective techniques. To start off, we have the 50-50 tackle. And for this, commit fully or don't go in at all. If you go in soft, your opponent is going to come out on top. And even worse, you could get injured. There's 3 things you can do to get this right. To start off, you want to lock your ankle and keep your foot firm, just like when you're making a hard pass. The second thing you can do is make sure you keep a bend at the knees and stay strong in your stance. And lastly, plant your foot firmly and keep your core engaged to avoid getting knocked off balance. The next way to win the ball is actually without even tackling, and it's about using your body. One of the smartest ways to win the ball is stepping in front of your opponent rather than going in for the direct tackle. This ties directly back to anticipation and jockeying, because the sooner you recognize their movement, the easier it is to cut them off. The third way to win the ball is by the slide tackle. Sometimes there's no other option but to go to the ground. Maybe the attacker has just taken a heavy touch and they're about to break away. In these cases, aim for the ball first. Don't be afraid of contact. If it's executed well, a slide tackle not only wins the ball, but also completely stops the attacker's momentum. And lastly, we have the tactical foul. Let's be real, sometimes you're beaten. And when that happens, a well-placed tactical foul can save your team from disaster. A shirt pull can slow down a counterattack. A light trip can stop an opponent from driving into open space. And just remember, be smart. A professional foul is about stopping play, not injuring someone. If you've followed all 6 steps, you're not just reacting to the game, you're controlling it. You're making attackers uncomfortable, forcing them into mistakes, and winning the ball when the moment is right. And that's what separates an average defender from a great one.